Hey everybody, welcome to Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We are coming to you, as always, courtesy of our broadcasting partner at The More Show. This week on the show, I am honored to welcome Joan Ranquet. Joan is an animal communicator, an equestrian, and author of Communication with All Life, Revelations of an Animal Communicator, and of course several other titles on related topics. She is the founder of Communication with All Life University, and has a real passion for sharing her abilities as a communicator and healer in workshops all across the country. Joan is a feature presenter at the upcoming brand new A.R.E. conference. This one's called Heal and Be Healed. And this takes place from September 23rd through the 25th of 2016 at the A.R.E. headquarters here in beautiful Virginia Beach. To register, you can visit our website at edgarcayce.org/conferences. Joan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a big honor for me.
Wonderful. And the first question, I want to get a little bit into your background and what you do exactly. So I understand that you kind of look to demystify animal communication and what exactly an animal communicator or a pet psychic does. So in saying that, can you explain a little bit about your process in going about doing that?
Sure. First of all, I think we're all animal communicators. So for me, being able to, so it starts with getting a sense of pictures, words, and feelings from the animals. And that's something we're all doing. And when I say that I want to demystify it, I really want people to understand that they're doing it all the time. A perfect example is when you think it's your crazy great idea to get the leash and go out on a walk. I can't say that word because I have some dogs that would jump up. But let's say it's your idea to go on a walk. It's probably your dog sitting on the couch sending you the, let's go. And you appear to have this bright idea. So that's just a teeny example of the sort of thing that's happening all day long. We are in a state, a morphic resonance, so to speak, of our household. So telepathy exists on a really subtle level at all times. And I just want to get people to understand how much it's going on, how much they are part of creating the behavior in their household, and how they can adjust that.
Wonderful. And you talked about telepathic communication. Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal telepathic ability, how the messages and the communication comes through to you, and how you use that to connect and heal with the animals?
Well, I get quiet, and if someone, let's say someone has an appointment with me, and they'll send me an email of their dog, cat, or horse, or ferret, and from there, I will get quiet, look at the picture, connect up with that animal, and telepathy knows no time or space, so it wouldn't matter if the dog or cat or horse or ferret was in Norway or Virginia or Orlando or Seattle. I would be able to connect with that being. And from there, I like to get a sense of who the animal is so that I can really get into some of the tougher questions if need be. So, and, I will say this. Often, animal communication works as a, and a lot of times, animals will feel like they have gotten a big story off their chest. So they'll have a certain level of relaxation. It shifts the human. So animal communication itself can seem like healing. And then there's one other piece to it, and that is, which is the theme of the whole, the weekend at Edgar Cayce of Healer Heal Thyself. I'm a big fan of working on myself on some level, doing some form of energy work before or after I meditate every morning. So I feel like when I come to the session, I'm coming to the session in my best beingness. And in doing that, I'm allowing the animal and the person to be in their best form. And that has a whole other healing effect as well, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And you've said that this ability that you have is a skill that you've honed over the years of studying and practice. And in saying
Yes.
that, what advice would you give our listeners who are looking to connect with their own animals in a very similar way?
Well, I always joke that I'm half border collie, so I really went at learning how to do this, like a border collie would stay focused on sheep. So I think a little bit of discipline. I mean, we all get this. It's sort of like inspiration. We could all be inspired to write a book, but unless you have a bit of discipline to sit down and write the book, inspiration is just, another moment. So it's the same with telepathy. Telepathy is happening all the time. And if you start to recognize it, then that's always exciting. And I think of it as a muscle. So it's a muscle that we haven't used since we learned language. So as little babies, we use telepathy all the time to connect with our mother, our father, our caregivers. And then as soon as we learned language, telepathy didn't have as much necessity, wasn't as important. So now we really need it to connect with our animals. And what I would suggest is really practicing every day or every other day, just taking a little bit of time and connecting up with your animal companion and getting a sense of what's going on for them, and see if you get pictures or words or feelings.
Excellent, thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
over your years of experience, Joan, what are some of the most common sources of disconnection you see when others are attempting to deepen their own connection to their animals in their life? What are some of the walls that you see people come up against?
One of my favorites is called Say What You Mean and Mean What You Say. And that is about the idea that, let's say, I mean, here's an example that almost every animal communicator will use. Let's say you have told the dog to get off the couch, but in your mind you're thinking, oh, when I leave the room, the dog's going to get back on the couch. And so what you're doing is you're setting up for the dog to get back on the couch. And the challenge with this is our minds have certain habits and neural pathways. So I think the biggest challenge to this is we don't pay attention to our thoughts. And so we can have a whole bunch of random seeming thoughts, but it's creating a pattern and direction for our animal companions. So they're tuning into us all the time because that's how they operate. I keep looking around because my dogs and cats usually make some sort of cute appearance in
No
things
worries.
like this. And here comes my dog right now. But anyway, they are tuning into us because that's how they function in a pack or a herd or a pride of cats. And so if they're tuning into us and we're thinking, oh my God, I can't believe that the cat peed on the rug again, the cat isn't thinking that that's a bad thing. They're thinking, wow, she's obsessing about peeing on the rug. I'll go pee on the rug. So it's our habitual thoughts that are the biggest thing to come up against, because we don't even realize half the time that we're setting up our animals for something naughty.
Right. That makes sense. And I know you have been known to talk about a concept that I really enjoy, and it's been a part of my life and kind of helped shape the way I view reality. And it's this idea of morphogenic fields, which you've kind of talked a little bit about that, and you call it morphic resonance as well. It's an idea that was introduced by Rupert Sheldrake, and
Yes.
Can you explain this a little bit more to our listeners who aren't aware? Because this kind of encapsulates everything that you're talking about, this idea that thoughts are things. And on a metaphysical level, there's a deep connection that always exists, that whether we're aware of it or not, it's still there.
Yeah. So what I love about Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, and he is that he took the time and spent some money and made this giant experiment about dogs and cats, and he wrote a book called "Owners" or "Dogs Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home," something very abundantly clear like that. And what he did was he did a giant experiment where everybody left their office downtown London at a different time, and there was a time-stamped camera in their home. And so as people got up from their desks to leave, let's say normally they left at 5 o'clock every day, well, maybe they left at 3:22 one day. And that particular day at 3:22, the dog got up from sleeping on the dog bed and sat by the door until the person, and maybe they even had a long commute home, but until the person got home. So, in other words, our animals are tuned into us at all times. And so, I love watching herds of, I just moved out to this farm outside of Los Angeles, and I have cows across the street, cattle that move together in a form. You watch birds, flocks of birds. I just got back from a dolphin trip, and I watch pods of dolphins communicate with each other without any seeming physical gesture. They all know what each other is doing. I watch fish as they move together and make decisions as a unit. And when you see that, what is happening is there's a field of energy, and this is what's happening in our household, a field of energy that is created by all of the beings in that household. So my cats and my dogs and I, and my horses down there, have created a field of energy that is its own field of energy, and it has its own intelligence and its own emotional code and its own, signature in the universe. And that field of energy needs leadership. I call our household needs an emotional leader. And because if you look at how animals function, their emotions are very different than ours and yet similar, but they are more emotional in many ways. They depend on an understand, if there's fear, it ripples through that field of energy. If there's joy, it ripples through the field of energy. And so I like for people to think of themselves as the emotional leader with their animals. But if people just started to understand how much there's this giant field of energy that we are part of, and whoa, okay, thank you. See, she agrees.
Yeah.
Causal to the reality, so to speak. Yeah, I know, Isabella. Thank you. Um, so that's what is my favorite topic, and I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such something that's very near and dear to my heart. I guess the reason why is I see this disconnection with humans when it comes to morphic resonance and morphogenic fields, and it's just simply, I guess, an unawareness about the metaphysical energy that's created by your thoughts and the energy that you yourself are giving off. And I guess it seems to be a worldview that's held that kind of, I guess you could say, in one regard, it sees animals as inferior to humans, and I know that's kind of a historic trend in human thought. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Where does this idea stem from, and how has it been kind of hurting or holding us back as a human species? Because I know when we talk about this morphic resonance, it seems like such a um, complex idea, a complex concept that animals are tapped into. I mean, it's obvious that they really are, and we don't seem to be so tapped into that. So why is it that we see them as inferior? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think because we have a different kind of intelligence. And so we have a kind of intelligence that is pretty cool. We can make like the skyscrapers and lift up bras, and we can put a person on the moon. We have this crazy, our superpower is logic. And their superpower, depending on the species, is something else that we don't give value to because it can't create, because we have a certain amount of greed, I suppose. Our superpower gets used to build a building that creates commerce. And so our value system is really what's, our values are a bit off. Their values are very different than ours. I mean, even little sharks have companions that they hunt with. So companionship is important there. Things that their values are just very, 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 very different. And also, I think with with greed and some of the other things that we've done, we have to, I guess, put them in a place that, how could we live with what we've done to them if we didn't put them in a lesser category? I mean,
Right.
I think at the end of the day, that's a big part of, we've exploited them, whether it's factory farming or poaching. It's gnarly, and I don't think people can live with themselves unless they make them less than us. It's still not
Right.
right, but that's what it
No,
is.
that makes sense. Absolutely. And I'm curious, Joan, as a dog owner, I've become quite a bit more mindful of both the behavioral issues of my own dog, but also the issues I see in other pets that I maybe wasn't so aware of before. But I'm curious, as I think about this, and I've watched all the behaviors over the years. Right now, I'm living in a situation where I get to live with two other dogs along with my dog. So I've seen some behavioral issues come out, and I'm curious: are these behavioral issues simply a reflection of the owner, of the inner psyche, or the shared consciousness that humans have, or is it kind of just being reflected back at us? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's all of the above and a little bit more. When you think about, like, if you were to, let's say I suddenly got married tomorrow. Well, my new husband wouldn't be a complete reflection. He would be coming with his own stuff. So often our animals come with their own stuff, and their soul, their mission, their purpose, just like we have. Um, and so when we team up, it gets to be a really great lesson plan, so to speak. And often stuff is reflected back to us. And it can very well be the shared human consciousness that's creating some of the stuff with the three dogs.
And Joan, I'm curious, what are some of the most important things when it comes to our pet's health? I know there's a lot of information out there, and I know for myself personally as a pet owner, it's hard sifting through everything and deciding, what is the best thing. Whether diet, exercise, a combination of all those things, I know are absolutely essential. But I'm curious, what are some of the most commonly neglected things that you find among pet owners and people who come to you as clients?
Well, I think one of the first most important things to health is, like humans, is making sure that our animal companions are getting enough exercise. So that's, I think, exercise and nutrition are the most important things. And so, what is nutrition? I'm a believer in raw food, and I, we don't get things. I didn't go out into the field across the street there and get a bag of food. when I went to eat. There's no bag of food in the wild. So I think, for one thing, the idea of giving our animals the same thing over and over and over and over and over every day is a challenge to their health. So I think really, everybody gets on the Google and has their ideas and opinions. But I think finding a holistic vet or a good nutritionist to work with is a great start. I have a lot of ideas in my book, Energy Healing for Animals, and also my first book, Communication with All Life. And I want, I would love for people to just become more aware of the ingredients that are in food. Like, if you look at the labels on the food that you're feeding, the first 5 ingredients should be, and I'm saying this with a big smile, should be food. And often the first 5 ingredients on almost any bag that you pick up is not food. So that's a challenge right there. And then, so we're feeding really processed foods. Often our animals aren't getting enough exercise. And then I think that really keeping the gut healthy, so your probiotics and, things like, probiotics are really important. And looking at, it sounds gross, but kind of keeping an eye on the poop and knowing what's healthy. Because the gut is part of the immune system, and the immune system is, the key to health. So really watching the gut, making sure that proper nutrition, good water, those basics are pretty darn important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, I know in the Cayce reading, I remember reading years ago, a particular reading that discussed the idea that potentially animals can go through lives with us. When you talk about past lives or future lives or alternative existences, there was a reading that said that an animal in one life can come back and be your animal in another life. What are your thoughts on animal past lives? Have you had any experience with that in your work?
Yeah. Wow. Isabella's
There
answering for us. Isabella, thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. I see the car. Yeah, they are going to work. Come on. Thanks. Thank you. All right. So what are my thoughts on animal past lives? I think that animals and people, I actually think that I have a cat here that was definitely my cat before. I think that I've been a horse. I know I have. I also know I've been a dolphin. I know, so I think we transmigrate. And I really, I believe that animals come back, and I've helped people when their animals have crossed, start to sort out what the animal would come back as, if they're coming back in that form. And I really love the idea that some of the same, it's interesting to watch the one cat that I know is a reincarnation, because there are times that we face the same issue and now we look at it with a different perspective, like almost like a little more mature. So that it's been really fun to, I don't always think about the fact that she was Alexandria, but I do see like us meeting similar issues again and again. And when I see the issue come up, like, this is so stupid, but like, we lived in LA together and now we're back in Los Angeles, but she's a different cat. And it's just seeing little things like, oh, now here's a colony of ants, and what she's just watching her perspective of something. And I don't know if I'm even making sense, as it's kind of matured years later in this different soul, same soul, different persona.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It does make sense. It does.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. For those who have that, yeah, for those who have that connection with animals, I think they absolutely understand what you're discussing there.
Yeah.
I'm What I wanted to talk about too is that you talk about your deep connection to horses and in connection with past lives as well. That definitely resonates with me because something that makes me really curious is we've all found in our life that some people resonate strongly with cats, others with dogs, snakes, reptiles, horses, etc. I'm curious, what have you found in your years of experience? What contributes to this either strong love or a strong distaste for certain animals? If obviously we have the a traumatic event that happens in this lifetime, which is obvious distaste for an animal, but the ones that kind of can't be explained, when somebody just doesn't like cats and they can't tell you why they don't like cats, what have you found is the root cause behind these type of things?
Well, it's interesting with cats. I think that most of the people I know that don't like cats have a real need to be needed, and
Oh.
they can't stand that a cat doesn't need them. And if you watch how their relationship is with dogs, and I mean, I could be wrong, but the people that I've known that don't like cats need a certain level of adoration, and yeah, they have real needs that they want to be needed, um, which is cool. I understand. I like the autonomy with cats, and so I love the fact that they don't need me. I I think that it's interesting that sometimes people have had something happen that's traumatic with a horse, and it just sets them apart. And because that's in their field of energy, often they'll attract that sort of thing to come back again if they're not careful. So it's almost like the repeat performance is right there if they don't address that initial fear or traumatic event. And the other thing that I've watched for years now, I've been taking people on dolphin trips, and I watch the people that have a certain amount of fear of water get into the water, and the dolphins either come around them and really help them, I guess, distracting by just an overload of joy and magic, um, or there's sometimes that the fear is so palpable that the dolphins go another direction. So I feel like, again, with the topic of heal or heal thyself, when you know you've got some sort of a fear or distaste for a certain species, to me, that would be like really worth examining, because that pattern, animals will find a way to help you recreate that pattern if you're not being conscious about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that idea that we talked about earlier of morphic resonance, it, that fear is absolutely picked up on by the animals around you. But as
Yeah.
you said with the dolphins, what's so beautiful about animals and their connection to that morphic field is that they pick up on that and they adjust accordingly in order to kind of ease any tension or fear that you may have. Especially dolphins, I've noticed over the years is pretty special.
Yeah. Yeah, they live in that field, right? So
Yeah.
that's their natural home, and we are the ones that are like, "What? There's a field of energy? I thought I was Miss Logic."
Right. Absolutely. One quick question I wanted to touch on, and I was curious what your opinion is. I've read a lot of research into vaccinations over the years, in particularly for humans, but many sources kind of explaining that they aren't maybe as necessary as we may have been told. I'm curious, do you find the same trend among animals? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that people have to do what they're comfortable with, and I know that some people are very comfortable with vaccinating, but I think that I I for one thing, a little animal, a little baby animal, little puppy, little kitten, little foal, doesn't need that giant dose that we often repeatedly give. So the antibodies will live in the system for a very long time. One thing that is starting to become recognized is getting a titer test, and that way you can see how many antibodies are in the system. If the system has enough of the rabies antibodies, then you don't need to consistently vaccinate for rabies. So it as we educate ourselves more and more, hopefully people are starting to see, and hopefully your vet is telling you, you don't need to do it every year. I think that, yeah, it's a crazy, it's a crazy challenge, and I've watched uh, I've watched some real tragic things happen as a result of rabies vaccinations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Good. Well, it's good to hear your opinion on that, because that's exactly what I had found through my own personal research, and of course, talking to holistic vets myself, is that the it's not so much the vaccinations themselves; it's the doses that they're giving. Because I heard
yeah,
of vets, experimenting with much lower doses and having really good results with that. So I guess
yeah,
in saying that, make sure we encourage our listeners, as you do, to go out and seek out a holistic vet, or seek out somebody like yourself who can give them some really good holistic advice on what to do when it comes to your pets.
and also, it's the dosage, and is the immune system healthy, and is if you're going to do a number of vaccines, is there a way that you could, even though it's going to be more expensive, do one day and wait a couple weeks before you do each one, so that you're not slamming that system. I know that shelters can't help it, but they'll often spay, neuter, and vaccinate all in one. They'll spay, neuter, and vaccinate all in one shot, and that's tough. That's tough on a system. They're already in shock.
Right, absolutely. And Joan, I remember years ago reading about a number of stories involving pets mimicking their owner's health condition or disease as kind of a means of showing them their own state of health, in which they may themselves be unaware. Um, have you found truth to this occurrence in your practice? I know specifically I had heard a story about a dog who had developed a tumor, and then sure enough, come to find out, the owner, had also had a tumor in themselves that they were completely unaware of. Have you found this idea that we talk about, a resonance, it can really be that strong with our pets?
Yeah, I just moved into this farm, and I had been down in I had moved out of the Seattle area down to San Diego, and I've got a lot of animals, so I have to, you know, be able to be somewhere where we can all be. And the place where we landed was, I didn't know it, full of black mold, and my horse got an eye. So I was in a guest house above a barn, and I was going to be there for, I'm looking around to see where I want to land permanently. And I didn't know there was black mold. So first my horse got conjunctivitis, and then I got a bad eye thing. And slowly but surely, my horse and I completely mirrored symptoms, and then we discovered the black mold and we got out of there. The next thing was it hit the lungs. So I've not only witnessed it as an animal communicator, but I've experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joan, what advice do you give animal lovers who are faced with a health challenge, whether it's due to disease or advanced age? How do we identify what the issue is without solely relying on veterinary intervention?
Well, I mean, I think animal communication is a great way, using a good medical intuitive. I have a program called Communication with All Life University, and even today in my home study course, we will be doing medical intuition. So, oops, sorry about that. So, there's a lot of people are good with the medical intuition. I think also aside from holistic vets are the only way I would go. Often chiropractors, equine or canine massage therapists. There's all sorts of different ways to get help for you and your animals. And I just lost an aging, excuse me. I just lost a 14 and a half year old dog. And one of the greatest joys of my life was watching her age, because she was half border collie and the most alive spirit you've ever seen. And yet she gracefully and graciously aged. And I always kept the exercise going up to her, as much as she could do. I kept her moving. And, the whole idea of move it or lose it is so true with aging animals. So I watched her just really graciously accept each, I guess, as her body not diminished, but it just really slowed down, and she took each step in complete grace. And I think that we can learn a lot from our animals when they're in these challenges, because there's ways that, okay, thank you. I guess somebody's driving down the street. There's ways that we can really learn from how present they are in each step of what they're going through. Thank you.
Right. Absolutely. So the important thing, I think, is for us to really remain mindful, because I noticed, I guess in connection to what I want to ask you is, you have a lot of pets yourself. So what I've found is that socialization has been such a key role in my dog's health. And what I've noticed with my dog being around dogs who aren't socialized is, I noticed the non-socialized dogs tend to have a lot of behavioral issues. Have you found that in your own practice? How important is it to have a socialized pet, whether it be a horse, a more domesticated animal? What have you found in that?
I think, they need each other. I love watching my dogs go play with other dogs. I'm glad I have several cats. My horses, I lived in the Seattle area, and my horses couldn't really see the neighbors. And right now we're outside of LA, and it's completely exposed. And if I take one of my horses out, the neighbor horses are screaming like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" So they have their eye on each other in a way that we don't even know. I mean, you always hear about a cat knowing that the tomcat's around, even though it's an indoor cat. So they need each other just as we need each other. And so what I have found is often people do protective measures with their animals, thinking that they're protecting their animal because maybe they have some sort of behavior that's not great. Like maybe they've got a slight amount of leash aggression. Well, instead of walking your dog at 5 a.m. when no other dogs are out, it would be better to get a dog trainer and really work through that issue. Remember what we said a few minutes ago. Animals are going to just move right into that pattern that we need to be addressing, and bring that issue up for us because it's in our field of energy. So often something like a leash aggression can get amplified and become this big thing, when it really is just, you need to step up your emotional leadership. You need to have a little better understanding of dog behavior, and we all need training, every one of us.
Right. Absolutely. And Joan, with you being in the field for so long, I'm curious, what are the newest advances, the newest things for you personally in your practice as an energy healer? What has been the latest developing trends for you as far as your practice?
I would say one of my favorite things that I've really kind of blown out is I loved around 2000, 2001, I learned EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, tapping. And I learned it and I thought, wow, this is going to be great for the people that have been bitten by a dog. It could be even great for that person with leash aggression. Maybe if I tapped on a person about walking outside and being calm, so I thought EFT was awesome for the human component. People that had come off their horse, people that had fear around horses, people that had fear around cats. I learned EFT, I got certified, I got really crazy on board with EFT. Then in about 2004, I had a situation where this horse was doing crazy, was going after ponies at a horse show. And this horse show happened to be full of ponies and little girls riding their ponies. And so I tapped on the horse. And that was such a miracle. That I started researching, okay, why are these points really profound with horses? And so then from there, I saw that was cool. And I would tap on occasion on horses. I'd tap on dogs. I even have tapped on cats. And when I was writing the book, Energy Healing for Animals, I have a lot of resources in there and I talk about certain modalities, and I have either interviewed at some point for my book or my program, Communication with All Life University. I've interviewed the top in the field, like, the head of Healing Touch for Animals or the best acupressure school. I know all these people. And so I started researching who's the best person that does EFT on animals. And I discovered there wasn't really any top of the line person. So I started really playing with it more. This is about 5 years ago. So I would say in the last 5 years, I created a program. And so now I teach it, and it's rigorous. I mean, I'm not just saying, hey, go tap on some animals. I'm like, get a bunch of case studies. If you want to do this, get a bunch of case studies, and I monitor the whole thing, obviously, on health, on behavior, on the human end of it, and on the animal end of it. And so now my students are calling me with incredible stories of animals shifting like that because of doing EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, on the animal and the human.
Wow.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah. Wow. How cool. And just for our listeners
Yeah.
who, I know you've said tapping. I guess for our listeners who aren't aware, it's tapping is what I can gather. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's based on sort of a traditional Chinese medicine technique of acupressure, where you are tapping on certain locations on the body that are based on energy meridians. They're the lines of energy that run through the body of all living things.
Yes.
And that helps to release certain emotional patterns by I guess changing the flow of energy by doing the tapping. Correct?
Yeah, it's in many ways just a pattern interrupt, but it also,
Yeah.
those particular acupressure points, if you think acupressure points are connected to meridians, meridians are connected to organ systems, and all organ systems have an element of have an emotional component. So if you're tapping on certain points, some of those points have a relaxation effect. Some of those points have a calming effect for the stomach. And again, what I was talking about with the stomach of your animal, the animals are completely tapped into their stomach. Their stomach is almost as big an emotional guidance for them as anything, because they, the whole idea of the gut instinct. So being able to calm that stomach down is almost the first step in shifting your animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Joan, can you tell us? I know we've talked quite a bit about your extensive knowledge and your experience in the field, but I know you give private readings, and I'd imagine some of our listeners, after hearing this, would be very interested in receiving that from yourself. So I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about your process when it comes to your private readings? What can a client of yours expect to take away from that?
Usually what happens is people will send me a picture of their animal, and we have an appointment time, and I will connect with their animal um, and with them on the phone, and I'll go over, get a sense of who the animal is on the planet, and then from there we might discuss any sort of health or behavioral challenge, and together we all come up with ideas to remedy the situation. And often the animal communication session alone is what helps, but maybe we want to do some EFT. Maybe I'm recommending that they find a good dog trainer. Often I'm recommending that they find a good dog trainer. And
Right.
that's what we do.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hmm.
And Joan, we got a little bit of time here left. You are a featured speaker at the upcoming A.R.E conference in September. It's called Heal and Be Healed, and this is a new presentation the A.R.E is doing, so we're real excited about this one. What do you hope conference attendees take away from your presentation? What kind of give us maybe a little insight as to what exactly you'll be talking about and what anyone can expect to take away from it who would be attending?
I'm going to walk through well, first and foremost, I'm a big fan. My whole program is based on an element of heal or heal thyself. And so I'm going to talk about uh, our energy system, animals' energy system, a little bit about morphic resonance, and then do a real introduction to EFT for the animal, for us and for the animal. And I'm going to, as we look at the animal energy system, like the chakras, we're going to get a really big understanding of behavior just from that. So they'll get a lot from having a deep look at the energy system of our animal companion.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And I know I love that idea of heal thyself, by the way, because that as as a animal lover and an animal having a dog in my own life now that I've been raised since 5 weeks old, um, it really is this incredible feedback that has helped to heal me as I go through my own process of my own life, my own process of enlightenment. There's really been a few things in my life over the past few years that have been as enriching as having a pet to not only give you the unconditional love, but to be there as a mirror to help reflect back the thought patterns that you're putting out into the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And Joan, as a last question, I'm always curious with my guests as you look ahead into the years to come, whether it be in your field or just kind of what's going on in general in our world. What has you most inspired, be it personally or professionally, as an energy healer working with animals?
It's amazing what has me inspired. I think my students have me inspired. I have a program, and I have a different home study courses, and then a big program. And a week ago, my students connected with a dog that had been feral, biting the foster people, and just after having a leg amputated, was probably hit by a car. And the shift that occurred for that dog, just in talking to communicating with the dog, And then one of the students going and doing the EFT tapping on the dog was then licking the foster people. So and that dog will get a great home. Um, that has me so excited. I can't even tell you, because I remember being that person that used to get so excited by a transformation. And when I was married, I would tell my husband, I'd tell anybody that would listen, oh my God, you can't believe what happened. And now my students are calling me, telling me those stories. And nothing excites me more than knowing that I'm helping other people experience and being that. And for that animal, that shift that's going to happen for that animal. And by getting more students, that's that many more animals that are shifting. And then there's another thing that really excites me, and that is the conversation and play that I experience with the dolphins, and sharing that with people that come on my facilitated trips. Being able to be in community with wildlife is something that, I don't know, that is that's where I'm going, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it harkens to, I guess, a different time in history where humans were more of an essential part of that community. You know, we had
Yeah.
a much closer connection to the animal world because of, we were living much different lifestyles back then. So
Isabella.
it's wonderful that you're not only are you connecting with that yourself regularly, you're bringing in other people, as you said, with the students and taking people on these dolphin trips. Because if there's anything I've learned over the years with my little experience with dolphins, but my research into it, is dolphins and whales are very, very, very special individuals when it comes to their existence within the field and what they do. Um, as far as everything they do, I could go on and on, as you could, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and whales too. And whales are what I want to, I did a naturalist course last year, so I learned so much about whales, and it was a marine wildlife naturalist course. So orcas were the subject, and I'm a crazy, or I'm a dorka. That's what we are.
I like that. I haven't
I
heard that.
learned a new phrase also this last dolphin trip. I'm a dippy, a dolphin hippie. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, a dorka and a dippy.
That's wonderful. Joan, thank you so much for really just doing what you do. It's if I gathered anything from this, I encourage all of our listeners to really, if you are an animal lover, or and you're lucky enough to have an animal in your life, really really try to connect on a deeper level with that animal. Because if anything, our conversation has shown there is so much to be gathered from that feedback between the energetic fields that you create. And
Yeah,
just stay open minded. I think it's important to not fall into that idea of there's a hierarchy built within the animal kingdom, because we're part and parcel of all that, and there is no hierarchy. There's just an intimate connection going on all levels.
absolutely. That
Yeah.
well said.
Well, thank you, Joan, and thank you so much for continuing to do what you do and continuing to bring in more people. That student aspect is so essential, and coming on here to our show, we're so blessed to have you. So thank you so much, and keep up the good work, Joan.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for putting information like this out there.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To learn more about Joan, book a private session, or get one of her wonderful books for your own personal library, you can visit her website at joanranquet.com. That's JoanRanquet.com. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook for all the latest guests and updates. And you can check out our website at edgarcayce.org/radio to catch up on any previous shows you may have missed. On behalf of everyone here at The More Show and the Association for Research and Enlightenment, I wish you an enlightened week, and thank you so much for tuning in to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. Hope to see you all next week. Until then, much love. And now it's time for the thought for the day here on Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. And joining me for the thought for the day is Dr. Bill Austin. Bill, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Brent. Always a pleasure to be with you. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to have you on. And if you can go ahead for our listeners and read the thought for the day today and give us your own personal thoughts on it.
I'd be happy to. This reading is from the Cayce Readings 938-1. For life and its expressions are one. Each soul or entity will and does return or cycle, as does nature in its manifestations about man, thus leaving, making, or presenting, as it were, those infallible, indelible truths that life, is continuous. And though there may be a few short years in this or that experience, they are one. The soul, the inner self being purified, being lifted up, that it may be one with that first cause, that first purpose for its coming into existence. Boy, there's a lot in here, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
He starts right off talking about the cycle of life, this our cycle, and how we also return. And he's talking about the concept of reincarnation. And even though some lifespans that we might have are short, some may be long, there are lessons to be learned. There's a purification process going on. And I like it at the end. They said that the first purpose for its coming into existence, referring to us, our soul, our inner self. And what is the essence of our soul or inner self? And it's really the spirit. We're an extension of the spirit of the Creator. And the soul that we have, I envision it as, we've been out playing, we're a little roughed up, we're a little scuffy, we're a little ragged around the edges. We have a purification process to go through to get back to where we were at when we started, the pure spirit. And as we go through these different sojourns, through these different life experiences, we're met with challenges that I think we've accepted prior to coming in this incarnation. We've accepted this scenario so that we can work out some of the confusion that we have on the inside. And when we get to the point where we're no longer confused, we'll remember who we are, that we are an extension of that pure spirit of our Creator.
Absolutely. Well said, Bill. Yeah, I like this one a lot. It's got a lot going on. To me, this is definitely a reminder of reincarnation and how important that really is. It's to me, it's so important to remember that we follow cycles just as everything in nature does. And for me, my way of always keeping in touch with that is to immerse myself in nature daily and just observe and watch what's going on. And this allows us, in essence, for me, it allows me to let go of the fear of dying and the need to constantly control everything, realizing that things are taken care of. There are cycles that are playing out through us, and to go with the flow of those cycles is essentially why we're here. And that's, for me, the path to oneness, the path to remembering where we came from. Um, and it's also what I like about this. It's a reminder that we're always making progress on our soul's journey, and to remember that oneness from which we came, to purify our thoughts and actions and lift ourselves up in quality of vibration, so that, as Cayce said, we can be a light unto others. And
Yeah.
for me, it's so important to remember that we are always making progress, even though we may miss the cycle sometimes and see how it can feel like we're making missteps. We are in fact always working towards that purification, that oneness, moving towards moving towards
Yes.
God.
Yes, and I think you came up with a key word there, that we're working towards it. And it's
Absolutely.
not a passive journey. It's like that childhood song, "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream." There's a lot of symbology in that, but there's a rowing aspect, there's a working aspect. And we
Absolutely.
have to go with the flow, but we have to do our part. We've got to work at it, and we have to keep I'm going to say the principles that are found in the core readings, the core principles of the Cayce readings, give us a wonderful guide on how to live this life, how to respond, so that we can be going in the right direction. We can be going downstream versus battling going upstream.
Right. Of course. Wonderful, Bill. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the thought for the day today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And
Thank you once again for having me.
we look forward to having you on next time. Thank you so much.
Great. Take care.
Bye-bye.